So I'm out here on Watts Bar Lake doing a little jet skiing up in western Tennessee. And I thought it'd be a good time to do an updated police dynamics video. You know, we're in a period of history in terms of the law enforcement profession that is largely unprecedented. You know, I've been in the profession now, this is my 40th year. And most of it's been as a police chief or a sheriff. And I know what it's like to hire and fire deputies and officers. I've done my share of them. And there's this narrative that's out there right now that's very negative and anti-law enforcement. Now, a lot of that narrative we don't deserve. A lot of that narrative we can't control. But there's some of it that we do have responsibility for. And I think that portion of it, we need to take ownership. So it got me to thinking the following question. What are the character qualities or the characteristics that we would look for in a deputy or an officer, and what is important for us today in this period of scrutiny and criticism and sort of an anti-law enforcement bias? Well, number one, I think, the number one most important quality I want to talk about is a hatred of evil. That's got to be a fundamental motivating factor behind a good law enforcement officer. You know, the Bible says that the hatred of evil is the beginning of wisdom. And then secondly, a love for justice. You know, righting the wrongs of the world. This has to be a fundamental motivator of a good professional law enforcement officer. But then thirdly, a respect for the law. Because see, a hatred of evil and a love of justice can get out of hand. It can even be negative if it's not balanced with the respect for the law. Those, you've heard me talk about it before, the centurion principle. Those of us that are in positions of authority have to be men and women that are under authority, that are respectful and obedient and submissive to the lawful authorities that have been placed over us. So we've got to be mindful of things like constitutional constraints, and mindful of things of being sure that we're following the law in all circumstances and that we're enforcing it properly in a just manner. And then fourthly is something that we talk a lot about on this blog site, and that is a commitment to character. And part of that commitment to character is moral courage, the inner fortitude to stand up for what is true and right and just, regardless of the circumstances and regardless of the cost. Because it will cost you something to do the right thing. We've had too much of this stuff where we're covering up for our errors, we're covering for bad officers, the code of silence, all this stuff. Those days are over. We have got to be men and women of such strong integrity and such strong character that we'll make a stand even when it's one of our own that is doing something wrong and needs to be exposed. And then fifthly is genuine humility. You know, when I was a young officer, my father had this conversation with me. He's deceased now, but he said that he believed that the best police officer is the one that has learned how to balance their authority with humility. And quite frankly, I didn't understand what he meant by it at that time. Some of the guys I was hanging around with that got my early start in my career, they were anything but genuinely humble. But as I've grown older and gotten more mature in the profession and my understanding of these leadership principles, I am absolutely convinced that he was 100% right, and that is we must balance our authority with humility. That is the essence of professionalism. Not thinking too highly of ourselves and not letting our ego drive our decision-making process. So those are the 5 things I wanted to share with you today. Hatred of evil, love for justice, respect for the law, commitment to character, including moral courage, and balancing our authority with genuine humility. I'm Sheriff Ray Nash with Police Dynamics Media.